Guys, today is chapter 4, day 6, and it's really not learning anything new. We're going to recap what we talked about in day 5, which was how do you find the formula for an exponential function? So let's talk about that. An exponential function can be written in the form y equals a times b to the x. All right, so basically for an exponential function, you need to find a and b. That is your main goal. If you know a and b, then you have your exponential function. All right, so let's talk about what is a and b. All right, a is the y-intercept. All right, and every problem might look a little bit different, but a lot of times the y-intercept might be given to you. You know, if you're given a table, you might see the y-intercept in a table. It's always 0, comma, a number. All right, if you're given a graph, you might be able to see what the y-intercept is. So really keep your eyes peeled for that because that's going to be a major shortcut if you don't have to actually do any work to find it and you just know it at the beginning. So just note that sometimes this is given to you. All right, number 2. Let's talk about you got to find b, right? B, all right, can be found by dividing successive y values. So b isn't something that you can, just see on the graph or see in the table. You got to do some work to find b. All right, so let's talk about, what successive y values are. Successive means one right after another. So let's talk about, say, for example, if you were given a table of x and f of x values. All right, and say in this table, we had the point 0, 2, 1, 8, and 2, comma 32. All right, so here, if we had to come up with an exponential function, we said it's in that form, all right, y equals a times b to the x. So I always write that down to kind of just remind myself that's the goal. All right, first I would look for a. Remember, a is the y-intercept, 0, comma, a number, all right, 0, comma 2. 2 is your y-intercept, all right, right here, you don't have to do any work. 2 is the y-intercept. All right, so we got y equals 2, and really, now we're looking for b. We said b can be found by dividing successive y values. So what I mean by successive is if your x values are one right after another, they go 0, 1, 2, they're right in a row, those are successive. All right, so how you divide your y values, you take a y value and you divide it by the previous one. All right, so b would be 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So your b value is 4. All right, and that's all you got to do. That would be your exponential function there. Again, every problem looks a tiny bit different. All right, I'm going to do another example. What if we had a graph that we were given? All right, what if we were given a graph something like this? All right, and let's say 2 points on it were labeled. All right, and let's say one of the points, all right, was 0, comma 2, and the other point was 1, comma 6. All right, if we had to come up with the exponential function, again, it's in the form y equals a times b to the x. Let's try to remember what a is. All right, a is the y-intercept. This point is the y-intercept. Our y-intercept is 2. So it'd be y equals 2 times our b value to the x power. To find our b, all right, we could divide our successive y values. First, you got to double check, are your points successive? All right, the x value, it goes 0, 1. All right, those are right in a row, 0, 1. All right, so those are successive. So what we can do is we can divide our y values. Got to be 6 divided by 2. All right, that'll be our b value. 6 divided by 2 is 3. All right, so our b is 3. All right, so those are some examples. All right, there's going to be kind of three scenarios that you could have when you're coming up with these formulas, y equals a times b to the x. All right, the first one is, you might have shortcuts. Again, they might give you the y-intercept. If they straight up give you the y-intercept and they give you 2 points that are successive, those are major shortcuts, and really the problem doesn't require much work. All right, so step one, I'm going to say if you can use shortcuts to find A and B. And what I mean by that, A, the y-intercept is obvious. They either, gave you a table with the y-intercept in it, or they gave you a graph and you can see the y-intercept. And then a shortcut for B is if the points are successive, if they're one right after another. All right. All you got to do is you got to find your A and B, and you got to plug them into y equals a times b to the x, and you're done. All right, those are the simplest examples, like these examples I did above, these two in red. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Those had shortcuts to find A and B, and they were super easy. All right. The next one is, what if they only give you a shortcut for one of them? Say they only give you the y-intercept, but the points are not successive, so you can use a shortcut to find A. Or maybe they don't give you the y-intercept, but the points are successive, so you can divide the y values to find B. Basically, if you only have a shortcut to find only A or B, let's talk about that next. So if you have a shortcut to find only A or B, all right, one or the other, but not both, all right, you can use that value, whichever one you could easily find, A or B, and an XY point. All right, they usually always give you at least one other point. All right, and you can plug them in to y equals a times b to the x. All right, so say if you knew the A value, you could plug in that. If you knew another XY point, you could plug in X and Y, and then the only thing left would be B, and you could solve for B. All right, say if you had a shortcut and you could easily find B, you would plug in B, you'd plug in the XY point, the only thing you wouldn't know is A, then you could solve for A. So you could plug them into that formula and solve for the unknown, whichever one you don't have, whether it's A or B. All right, the last one, if no shortcuts are available, they just don't give you the y-intercept and the points are not successive. Say they're really far away from each other, like 1, 4 and 30, 79. All right, that's when you have to do it the long way. So if no shortcuts are available, all right, how you set it up is that ratio we did in the notes yesterday, y equals a times b to the x over y equals a times b to the x, and you plug in your 2 points. All right, your 2 points, you should have an x and a y. You could plug in one on top. You should have another x and a y. You could plug in the other on bottom, and then you could solve from there. All right, so those are kind of those three scenarios. I would try these problems on your own. This is really meant for a worksheet for you to get some practice. And then if you have questions, then I would watch the video and look at the problems that you struggled with. So the first one, find a formula for an exponential function. Important to remember that's y equals a times b to the x. We got to find a, we got to find b. All right, and they give us this right here. This is function notation, basically a fancy way of writing 2 points. We've got the point 1, 1.02 and the point 2, 0.204. All right, so right off the bat, we do not have the a value. We don't have the y-intercept. Neither of those points are 0, comma, a number. However, these points are successive. The x's go 1, 2, they're right in a row. So points are successive. So there is a shortcut to find the b value. So what I would do is step 1, to find the b value, divide the y values. You always have to divide a y value by the previous one. So the order does matter. So 0.204 divided by 1.02. And if we type that into our calculator, we get 0.2. So our b value is 0.2. All right, so step 2, think we're trying to come up with an equation in the form y equals a times b to the x. All right, we just found b is 0.2, so let's plug that in. And our next thing, we can use either point and plug it in for x and y. Really doesn't matter what point you choose. All right, I would pick either of these points up here. I'm going to pick 1, comma 1.02. Honestly, those just look like smaller numbers. So I'm going to plug those in for my x and my y. So it's going to be 1.02 a times 0.2 to the first power. And really, to the first power, anything to the first power is itself, so you really don't need that. And think about to solve for a, you could just divide both sides by 0.2. The 0.2's cancel, so we get a equals, and if you divide 1.02 divided by 0.2 in your calculator, you get 5.1. So a is 5.1. All right, remember the goal wasn't to find a, it's to find an exponential function in this form. All right, so step 3, let's put it all together. We were trying to come up with something in this form, y equals a times b to the x. All right, we just found our a was 5.1. Our b, we said, was 0.2 to the x power. And that right there is our final answer. 5.1 times 0.2 to the x power. Write an exponential function for the graph. And so again, just think about, what the end goal is. An exponential function is something in the form y equals a times b to the x. And a is that y-intercept. We know the y-intercept. All right, our a is 1.5. So that's super nice that we know that. So we've got 1.5 times b to the x power. All right, we cannot use a shortcut to find b in this case. Our points are not successive. If you look at the x's, it goes from 0 to 4. Those are not right in a row. So we cannot just divide the y values to get b. All right, but what we can do is we can use our other point up here and plug that in for our x and our y, and we can solve for b. All right, so our y is going to be 41.976 equals 1.5 times b to the x is 4. All right, and think we just have to get b by itself. So we can then divide both sides by 1.5. All right, and I would probably refrain from putting that in your calculator until the very end. So think the 1.5's cancel. So we've got b to the 4th. And to get b by itself, we can just 4th root both sides. And so that gets b by itself. And then you could type that into your calculator. Excuse me. 4th root of all of that, I believe, is 23. So again, we were trying to come up with an exponential function. All right, we knew a, we were just trying to find b. So basically, I'm just going to rewrite this. Y equals 1.5. Our b is 23. I'm sorry, I think that was 2.3. Sorry, not 23, 2.3 to the x power. All right. How you could check your answer, if you wanted to know if you were right, you could always plug in your points, like plug in 0 for x and see, do you end up with 1.5? All right. If you were to do that in your calculator, 1.5 times 2.3 to the 0 power, you do end up with 1.5. Same thing with your other point. You could plug in 4 for x and double check. Do you get 41.976? The equation should work for both points. And that's kind of a quick way to check. And it does work, so you know your answer is right. Number 3, find the formula for an exponential function. So again, we're trying to find something in this form y equals a times b to the x. We do not have the a, all right, this y-intercept. We don't have it. We don't have a 0, comma something. In b, all right, we can use a shortcut if we have successive points, but this goes from 1 to 4. Those are not successive. 4 to 6, not successive. So this is one of those where we don't have any shortcuts. So we said if you don't have any shortcuts, how you set it up, step 1 is where you do this ratio of y equals a times b to the x over itself. All right, and we need to pick 2 points. It does not matter which 2 points. All right, I'm going to plug this first point in on top for my x and my y, and then I'm going to plug this second point in on bottom for my x and my y. All right, so if we do that, we're going to get negative 0.6 equals a times b to the first power. All right, all over on the bottom, we're plugging those in. Negative 0.075 equals a times b to the fourth power. Again, it does not matter which points you pick. If you picked the last one, that would work too. All right, it doesn't matter which one you plug in on top or bottom. All right, doesn't matter. Happens the same way every time. The a's cancel. All right, on the left, a negative divided by a negative will be a positive. So we're really going to have 0.6 over 0.075. Going to turn the 2 equals into 1. And then think about on top, we have a b and 4 b's. We can cancel 1 on bottom, so we have b to the third. So really nothing's left on top, so you should put a 1 there, 1 over b to the third. All right, and now we could solve for b. If we cross multiply, you get 0.6 times b to the third equals 0.075. And then to get b by itself, you can divide by 0.6. 0.6's cancel. To get b by itself, you could take the cubed root of both sides. And if you type that into a calculator, you should get 0.5. So b is 0.5. All right, remember we're not done. All right, we're looking for a function in the form y equals a times b to the x. Keep the end goal in mind. All right, think about where we are right now. We just found b. We got b is 0.5. All right, so next we need to solve for a. All right, so we need to once again use one of our points. I might use this first one right here for my x and my y. All right, y is negative 0.6 equals a times 0.5 to the first power. All right, really anything to the first power is 1, so we probably don't even need that first power. And then to get a by itself, we just divide both sides by 0.5. And you get a equals, if you divide that in a calculator, I believe you get negative 1.2. So now we have our a and our b. So the very last step, we are looking for an exponential function in this form y equals a times b to the x. A is negative 1.2, b was 0.5. So this right here is our final answer. All right, I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have questions, definitely ask your teacher. Otherwise, you can get started on the homework for tonight. Have a great day.